okay if they're Union Lane orientated or Elizabeth Way orientated, and if people want to go to those respective tables, that may be a way to ensure that we get through all the work. However, everybody may be concerned about every aspect of the project, and if that's the case, then we stick with the tables that we have. The final point I'd like to make is this. There will be two presentations at the outset. One from Glenn Higgs, who will present in terms of what is before us from the City Deal Board. The second presentation will be from Michael Page and Charles Nisbet, that representing the residents' associations, putting an alternative proposal on which we can work. I would suggest very strongly that we work on the officers' proposal, because if that were what to get out, or the City Deal, one that's being floated here, if that were to get up and we hadn't had an input, then that would be a very bad thing. So I would urge to work on that one and then to work on the alternative, so that we're working on both proposals, because we would hope that the alternative proposal is what gets up. But if it doesn't, then we don't want a proposal to get up into which we have had no or little input. So those are my final urgings, and I'm afraid I do have to leave after about an hour, but our intrepid Vice Chair, Councillor Jerry Bird, will say thank you at the end for all coming. I'll say my thanks now, and I'll hand over to Glenn Higgs to do the first presentation. Thanks, Glenn. Where's he gone? I just have to say thanks so much to it's Dr. Miles, I'm sorry I've forgotten your family name, who helped with getting the sound system working. So it's excellent. We've had cooperation already between our residents' representatives and our county representatives. So, Glenn. This is Glenn Higgs from the consultants.
Good evening, everyone. So the agenda for tonight's session is just for me to run through some slides quickly, and then there's the alternative to the presentation. And then we've got the breakout session. So we've got two breakout sessions. They're both covering the same, along the same line. So I'll explain through my slides, but it's to go through systematically the five areas of Milton Road. So basically they're the same. The two sessions are the same, so it's a case of getting as far as you can the first one, then picking it up again the second one after the break. And then we'll have a similar way as the previous workshops, feedback session, then 5 minutes of summing up. So that the plan tonight is to finish at 8:30. If we run over again, it's not, if people are happy with that, then it's probably not too much of a problem. So what we're trying to achieve tonight is to pick up on some of the areas where people feel maybe things could be improved. So just looking at specific certain areas of Milton Road, and to look at the existing situation, to look at the current design, and for you to think of alternative designs, ways of looking at it, which have been done to a certain extent in previous workshops, but the important thing is to do an assessment of those. So the current, the proposed, and the alternatives. So to look at those three, and there might be more than one alternative you look at, and using this system that we've shown in the sheets here, which I'll explain, to do some kind of assessment, so you're doing a kind of like-for-like basis. And this is to look at the pros and cons of each proposal. And what we're assessing them against are the objectives of the scheme. So that's why I've summarised it here. So just going through this, so it's to introduce priority for buses. This has both directions for this because it's the original objectives, but we know now things have changed. We're looking at bus lanes in one direction only. So this is in terms of the assessment to reduce journey time and improve reliability of buses. To introduce additional capacity for sustainable trips, so to reduce journey time and improve reliability for walking and cycling. To increase bus patronage and introduce new services, to provide safer, more convenient routes for cycling and walking, so it's about improving road safety, to maintain or reduce traffic levels, so that relates to congestion, and to enhance the environment, streetscape and air quality. So within the context of what we were talking about previously, it's about trees, but ground versions. So once we kind of distill that down into a format that we can use for the assessment, this is what we have suggested it should be scored against. I'll talk about scoring in a minute. So these points here relate to the previous slide, it's just in a different format. So we'll be looking at journey time or reliability for motor vehicles, for separate buses, for cyclists and pedestrians. So for cyclists and pedestrians, it's less about reliability, it's more about directness, journey time, particularly about crossing the road. Ability to manage network, you could say that's akin to talking about congestion. When we're talking about junctions, it's congestion and the ability to control that congestion, to improve it. So that's why it's about managing the network. And then road safety, more straightforward for motor vehicles, cyclists, pedestrians, then finally scoring against the public realm opportunities for trees, verges, and the public realm itself.
A quick question.
Yes?
At what time of day are we to score this?
I don't think we can do it in that kind of, exact way. I think within, let's say there's a peak period for simplicity. If that helps in looking at consistency.
Simply you get two completely different answers.
But if we were to try and, I appreciate that's the case, but to do that within the time we've got today, to try and keep it simple. To do it on a weekend is different, to do it at different times of day is different, but if we have to score it 4 times for every element, for every alternative scheme, we'd be here till midnight. So it's just trying to simplify the assessment.
There's no problem except that rush hour.
Yeah, I think we all have to use the same.
So let's say
rush
rush
hour.
hour.
No sense.
Yes.
Are we
Okay.
talking about the rush hour peak time in the morning or peak time in the evening? This that would be different, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because trying to stay
When it comes to scoring, I think it will become apparent it's not an exact
It's quite
process.
important actually, because the traffic's different at different times. Perhaps each table will take a different time and
We won't be scoring each individual arm, because a lot of the movements are timed, so it's congested in one direction in the morning, the other direction in the evening. When we're looking at the junctions, we're looking at the junction as a whole. So when I go through the scoring process in a minute, I think if there's any more questions on that, if you think there's ways to improve the way we're going to score it today within the time constraints we've got, and trying to keep it simple so everyone's on the same page and understands it, then we'll pick it up again at the end of the presentation. Okay. So the areas we're looking at, ideally in this order, to be honest it's up to you, but this is a suggestion reflecting the comments that we've had previously in order to do it. So to go through this systematically.
Excuse me, so before you go on, could you explain, a little bit of explain, which has some quite active ways, what do you mean by ability to manage network brackets congested? Do you mean, will you be coming on to give us detail about that?
I'll talk more about that in a second.
Thank you.
So Elizabeth Way, Union Lane, and then a typical section of the road where it's a bit narrow, so here it's near Herbert Street, which is there we covered previously, an area of the street, a section, cross-section where it's a little bit wider, so near Ramsden Square, and then finally King's Hedges Road. So they're the 5 assessment areas. And the idea is to get as far as you can through the assessment. So just to set the kind of scene here in terms of pros and cons, you might not agree with all these, but hopefully it gets your mind thinking. So I'm just going to whiz through each 5 areas and talk about pros and cons of the existing situation and the current design. So Elizabeth Way, so advantages might arguably, so you've got access to Highland Avenue still. When it's uncongested, you're not delayed at the junction, you're not waiting for traffic normally. There is green space, quite a lot of it, in the middle of the roundabout. Disadvantages might be there aren't any controlled crossing facilities for pedestrians and cyclists. When cyclists need to get across the roundabout, they need to mix with traffic. When it is congested, the roundabout tends to block up, so it becomes more of an issue. There's no ability, because it's unsignalised, to respond to different traffic conditions and to synchronise with other nearby crossings and junctions, just because of the nature of roundabouts. And the green space in the middle isn't usable. You can't walk on it, play on it, and use it for different things. Doesn't mean it's an issue for people, but this is what I'm saying. This is to get minds thinking. I wouldn't necessarily expect to agree with all these. I'm sure you've got your own advantages and disadvantages as well. So the current design provides one-stage crossing for cyclists and pedestrians, and get across in one green light. It's got full segregation of cyclists and all arms, so not mixing in traffic. More direct crossings, they're closer to design lines. More pricing, because it's only by virtue of the fact it's southbound bus line that comes in down the approach to Elizabeth Way comes up to the stop line. There is arguably a ability to manage the network because it's signalised. So at different times of the day, depending on how much traffic is on each arm of the junction, you can vary the signal times to respond to try and release that traffic quicker. And if Arbury Road is more congested, you can maybe release traffic to approach Arbury Road slightly later to not get stuck in the back of the queue straight away. If there are no pedestrians, the traffic won't necessarily get held at lights. So it's the ability to change basically the signals, different times of the day, different times of the week, and to a certain extent future-proof it if in future traffic conditions change as well. So that's the theory anyway. And the green space here is usable.
Sorry, excuse me. Could you explain to me how vehicles turn at Oak Avenue? Doesn't seem to be a turning head there, so that means that your last 2 points don't hold, I don't think.
Green space is usable by pedestrians.
Oh, right, okay, it will also be used by vehicles for turning, as far as I can see. There's no turning head at the end of 5th Avenue.
I don't really want to get into details, but there is a turning, just because we haven't really got time, there is a turning head. There's a kind of bell-shaped area for vehicles, just above the green space.
Is that a standard one?
It doesn't look very big. Normally at the end of a cul-de-sac, you'd have what would seem to us to be a bigger...
The list of advantages and disadvantages isn't exhaustive. As I've said, maybe you don't agree with all these, maybe you've got additional ones to add, and that might be one that you feel should go on the disadvantages. The purpose isn't to set out an exhaustive list of advantages and disadvantages here. It's to have a quick discussion to kind of set that context and for you to take that in mind and all your other advantages and disadvantages to score the schemes.
And that is a key issue for the local government.
But if you think it's a key issue, then reflect that in scoring. Yeah. The green areas could be whatever the public and others feel is the best use of that space. Whether it's play areas, whether it's trees, grass, verges, concrete, whatever people feel is the best use of that space. What it is, it's indicative. It's an indicative area that can be used for different uses.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't want to delay you unnecessarily, but I'm just slightly confused as to why you were back to the original plans when all the feedback from the 4 workshops we've done has said that we don't particularly want the roundabout.
Because the intention, it's not part of the process. There isn't time for us to go away between sessions and redesign things. It's an iterative process depending on feedback. So what this is setting out to do is to try and provide a consistent kind of structured way of looking across the current, the proposed, and your alternatives to see how they vary in their scores.
Forgive me, but an iterative process dependent on feedback suggests that the feedback, if you take on board the feedback...
Which is why we're standing here today, so we can get more feedback. And then
we just need to keep saying it every time.
Yes, okay, we'll keep saying it.
There's a week or two between workshops. It's not possible to redesign the scheme in that time. And where would we then? Maybe people would then say, well, hold on, I actually prefer the previous one. Maybe other people do. So we have to draw a line and then have all these sessions and then go away and reflect on that.
So can you reassure us that at the end of the process you will be taking away all the feedback that you have incorporated into your report, which I did read this afternoon, thank you very much, which basically said we wanted the Elizabeth way roundabout to remain.
Feedback's been, I don't want to comment on the council behalf on the exact process, but the feedback's been fed back to the board, and the board makes decisions on what they feel.
It is fed back through the local liaison forum to the board, so the board will get direction on how the scheme is designed after those workshops taking place.
It would just be a great shame if these 50, 60 odd people who've given their time over the last 4 weeks, if their viewpoints were not eventually taken into account.
Yes.
I've just been wasting our time.
The intention isn't to
Waste our time.
ignore feedback.
Are you sure?
I'm quite sure the whole process is
You're 100% sure on that.
to take on, the purpose is,
100% sure.
if you let me finish, the purpose is 100% to take on board the comments, to reflect on those, to feed it back to the board, to the owner, and then it's part of their decision on their steer on what.
Absolutely. It's got to be a balanced view though between feedback that comes from these meetings and achieving the objectives that were shown in the initial slide. So I think that's where the balanced decision making comes into play. So the board will have to take into account the feedback from the local liaison forum, the report from officers that assesses the feedback, assesses how those design issues can or can't influence the needs to be achieved, and then they'll make the decision based on that. Whilst we're saying yes, we will take into account all feedback that's good, we can't give an absolute guarantee that everybody's desires will be incorporated because there'll be contradictory desires within the groups that they're getting.
I quite appreciate that, and that was the point I made at the forum, which was how you're going to balance these opposing views. But we'll take on board that you're on
But hopefully what's useful today, even though, as here, we're looking at, in this case, the current design. What we did do previously was scoring. So there's a lot of comments which are useful, but there might be some consistency through this on what people think in terms of actually quantifying, which will be useful to take away as well. That will give us a more of a measure of how pleased, how happy or not you are with certain elements of the design against the alternatives which you'll be suggesting.
Are you confident that you have presented all the reasonable options to people for them to score? Because if there are only like 1 or 2 initial designs that are being scored and evaluated, people don't have the opportunity to properly consider maybe an evolved design that has taken into account some further thinking. Can you say that all the reasonable options have been spread out for people to evaluate?
We're not looking at all conceivable options here.
No, I said all. So, for example, take this one junction. This is clearly a very complicated design challenge. You're professionals in designing junctions and road layouts. We're not. It would be reasonable to expect that the professionals would provide a spectrum of things they think are feasible, covering a range of different things. Obviously, you've got this one here, maybe 1 or 2 others. Have you put down all the reasonable options that you think are possible so for people to evaluate?
It kind of relates to the point before. We want to reach a point where we're reflecting on the current designs, take on board all the suggestions for the alternative designs, how strongly people feel about those alternative designs versus the current design in the scoring. And that gets fed back to the board, and then that's the next process for evolving those designs.
Because you having to follow in between workshops, so as the lady said, there is an opportunity to score on an equal basis the alternative suggestions against your original ones.
Lots of people have different views and alternatives.
Yes.
And that's what we want to hear. And we haven't reached that point yet where we've talked enough about alternatives and assessment. So that's part of this. I think it's almost the next stage where the designs the comments are considered, go back to the board, it's that process, and then there's further design iterations. Quite what the process is then in terms of discussing that again, I don't know. I think that's the next stage. And just within the time constraints what we've got, if we have 5 alternatives for each element of the design, we have to have a lot more workshops just to be able to cover all that within the time.
Could the representative of the local authority just clarify? I seem to recall that the idea was that this would go out to our consultation. We would come up with ideas, and then there would be a further public consultation. Remember that being part of Richard Preston's little flow chart. It showed a different public consultation after this one. Could the local authority representative explain to us whether at that stage the revised designs, how are those going to be consulted?
I think we'll go through a huge consultation process, but the process at this stage is to come up with a set of design parameters that we take away, we agree with the local liaison forum, send back to the board give their agreement, I suppose, to develop the design along those principles we take away from what's been developed by the consultants and what's been developed by with using ideas from these workshops. It all feeds back into one sort of master plan that then is the subject of further consultation.
Yes, so could you just clarify what that stage is about?
Well, that will be hopefully we'll narrow it down to a single design, which hopefully will be a single design that we can go out to consultation to get views on how it impacts on people in a more formal way. And I think the point that I made in the introduction in the first workshops is these were consultation exercises. These were engagement exercises to get the local contribution to these schemes. We're not about revisiting these the parameters that we're working still at the moment have been agreed by the executive board back in June. So we're working along those design principles at the moment. It's trying to develop those design principles now and take into account local feedback in the further development before it goes up to public consultation.
So you just envisage one design, one revised?
I would hope that we could get it down to one design. I think there may be options within the overall principle of design.
Can I make a suggestion? What's on the overhead display there is basically the city deal proposal that we're all familiar with. It's been on the table for a long time, or displayed for a long time, but most of us in the room are opposed to it, but we have to start from this point. And I'm most concerned that we're getting stuck on just a presentation without allowing that presentation to go forward. We'll have plenty of opportunity to discuss this around the tables. This we know is the current proposal. If we're against it, we have an opportunity to say so, but we can't waste time by questioning it now. It has to be around the tables. We know viable alternatives that we think are viable and which are going to be proposed. And I'm going to be very sorry if we sit here squabbling about it at this point, but we should be moving on. I'm particularly keen on looking at what are identified, first of all, as the disadvantages. So if we sit here looking at this display, I think we should just let this ride and make some progress.
We will continue. So, increase of wage pays, sorry, what's going on here? There we go. So that's the roundabout now. That's what potentially could be wage pays. Disadvantages, you might get additional congestion or delays when it's uncongested, because you've got signals. If you hit signals on just approaching red, you might be delayed when you wouldn't otherwise be because of roundabout. There's still, because it's shown as a kind of shared use area on the approaches to the crossings, so in theory, pedestrians cycling mixing there, so potentially interaction issues as with all shared use areas. Some now may feel there's a loss of identity with the removal of the roundabout, and of course this will mean closure of Highland Avenue. So Union Lane, so advantages with the current, you can access Union Lane. It's got crossings on all arms, it is heavily congested, it's minimal priority for cyclists, and there is minimal green space. With the current design, just because Union Lane is closed, it means, and the main reason it's proposed, is more green time on the traffic on Milton Road, buses in particular. There's crossings on all arms as there is now. There's additional priority for cyclists, not that much, but some. There's a bit more green space potential, not a huge amount. Disadvantages, obviously, no access to Union Lane. Now, these are... As I said before, this is just an initial list. There might be more that you can reflect on those when you can score here. So these are cross sections. We could have taken a section of street, but hopefully it still works in terms of being able to score it. So the existing layout is as shown. So advantages, cyclists on one side of the road with pedestrians, so they are segregated from traffic. Trees and parking on one side of the road, and there is already a bus lane. But there isn't a cycle lane on the south side of the road, and the cyclists and pedestrians need to mix in quite a narrow space there, which is 2 metres. So in the current design, this is looking towards Elizabeth Way, there's cycle lanes on both sides of the road, which are fairly wide, 2 metres, so pedestrians are segregated from cyclists there. But there is no trees or parking shown, and there isn't a two-way facility for cyclists on the north side road as it is now. So that's Herbert Street. Moving up the road, Ramsden Square. Herbert Street is 17.5 metres, that's the narrow cross section. This one's 22 metres. So at the moment, there are trees parking version of both sides of the road and cycle lanes on carriageway in both directions. But there isn't a bus lane, and the cycle lanes aren't segregated. So the current design introduces a bus lane with segregated cycle lanes, but there's lots of trees and park on one side of the road. Now, I think it's the previous workshop, this was the only cross section actually, just to give a flavour, just flavour of some of the alternatives. So I put those in here. So you could score those in the scoring system I'll show you in a minute as one of your alternative designs, or you could dismiss it completely and create your own. So there's space for 3 alternative designs to be scored. These could be 2 of those or your own. So this was one of the alternatives where there are still trees on both sides, but no parking. And there's an alternative to that. There are trees on both sides, no parking. The cycle lanes are set back from the carriageway. And then finally, King's Hedges Road. There's not many advantages, I don't think. Some green space. There aren't crossings on all arms, but it's a heavily dominated junction of traffic. Crossings are in 2 stages rather than 1. They're not quite on the design lines in most cases, and the feeder lanes, the approach lanes on the carriageway to the junction site is quite narrow, and curb radii, the sweeps are quite wide, so it encourages quite fast movement around corners. So the current design tightens up the geometry, which does provide a bit more room to do more with the ground if that's desired. 1 stage crossing, so it's a bit more convenient, quicker to get across the road in theory. Crossings a bit closer to die lines, and there are some additional cycling facilities, but they're not segregated, and there's minimal bus priority there. So that's the pros and cons. So basically, what we're asking you to do here is, against those factors I mentioned before, to firstly to associate a weighting in terms of importance. So this is really useful for us to know how important you think those factors are for that particular area. So you might think, in that location, public realm is more important for whatever reason, and so you score that accordingly. And then to take the existing layout and to put scores from 1 to 10, where 10 is very good, against all these different factors. So this just show an example of Elizabeth Way here, but obviously it's the same for all of the areas. So to score each of those against the existing layout, look at the current design, score again, and then you put pen to paper and score against your alternatives. And depending on how much time you've got, and depending how interested you are in that particular area, you might look at one alternative or more before we move on to the next one. So score against those. I'll just mark that one up because there should be a different scoring table. The only difference is for the cross sections, it's not really relevant to say the ability to manage network. It just doesn't make sense to score that. So that's been removed from the table for the cross section.
Can I ask what you mean where it says score 1 to 10, where 1 equals very poor? For what?
So let's take Elizabeth Way for the current existing layout. So journey time for motor vehicles, does it reliability? So if you're driving through Elizabeth Way, we're staying in the morning peak, does it take a long time? So is it poor?
Is it peak time, as you suggested?
Pardon?
Is it going to be peak time?
Yeah, I think we agree worst case scenario. So say...
When you're scoring it, I mean, on the first December, you're going to have to turn across the traffic to go down Elizabeth Way. Are we scoring that way or going up the road?
We can't, unfortunately, we can't precisely. We're just going to try and assess it. How does that roundabout function in terms of getting across it?
Overall, you've taken into account